Hey guys, I am back and just in time to deliver kind of one of my favorite sections or types of lesson to you. Today was all about getting you in the mindset of colonial Americans and really facing head on the pressures and everything that was kind of running through the minds of these colonial Americans, because sometimes it can be really tough for us to connect to this part of our history just because it was so long ago for us and the world was so different over 230 years ago. But I wanted to make sure that you didn't miss the fact, especially since you're going to be taking on the lives and personalities and personas of one of these characters. I didn't want you to miss just how similar the pressures that faced colonists are to the pressures that face us as a society and as a people, and even you as really kids today. So today was all about going back through, and you watched a Brain Pop, and I'll let you watch it. I've given you the link down below this video, and also the password and username, so that you can log into Brain Pop and actually view the video. So I won't rehash that, but it went through a bunch of the causes of the American Revolution, and we agreed that a lot of the reason that some, or half, and then growing to most colonists, and I wouldn't even say most, I hesitate to use that most, because that didn't even really ever happen, that most wanted to rebel. But a lot of them chose to rebel because they felt their very way of life was threatened by all the different acts and taxes that were being put on goods that they had to buy in order to survive, or that they had to buy in order to continue to live the way that they had always lived. And you know that their cry was no taxation without representation, but more so, what they were crying out about was the fact that life was becoming more and more difficult and they had no say in it whatsoever. So, anytime you threaten my way of life, my dander's going to get up. Anytime you bring my family into this, my dander's going to get up, and what that means is I'm going to get agitated. It's just like how your parents will say some things about how, oh, taxes are up again this year, or, oh, you know, the gas prices are up, or, oh, they just raised our internet bill, or... The reason that we get worked up about that is because when everything stays the same of what we're earning, of what we're able to make, and costs of everything else goes up, that makes it more difficult for us to continue to live the way that we live. And so the pressure is that politically we need to do something about it as a whole, because individually we can't do anything about it by ourselves. Interesting thought. Hold on to that. Because that's only one facet, one side of the pressures facing and the angst working up in the minds of colonists. Another one is this sense of religious turmoil. See, we talked about, and I gave you the sheet that you can download at the very bottom of this post, How Do I Choose? We took a look at two authentic documents from, I mean really from a time period long before that, but that were instrumental in the foundation of America as a nation. See, when America was founded and the colonies were really established, they were established for religious freedom. But at that time, it didn't really mean what it means today, where we are free to worship any god we choose, whatever we choose, however we choose, or we have the right to worship no god or any god at all. It doesn't mean religious freedom like that. What religious freedom meant back then was, since we are a Christian nation, and our mother country of Great Britain, or Britain I should say, England, was all Christian dominated. You were free to worship the Christian God however you saw fit, but church was still compulsory, meaning it was against the law not to attend church. And even the schools, the first public schools, which means they received government money in this country, were formed mostly to teach kids how to read, interpret, and live by the Bible and the Bible standards. So I had you guys read through, and I won't go into too much of that worksheet because you can download it right at the bottom, but I walked you through the 10 Commandments, and I walked you through the 7 deadly sins because Tim mentions them a ton already, where he says, oh, I would do this, but I'm not allowed because this is this, and this is this, and this is a sin, and I don't want to sin. So again, this is not me preaching religion to you, and I want to make that very clear. I hope I made that clear in all of the different classes. But remembering that things like laziness and lying and cheating and stealing and all of these things weren't just, oh, I shouldn't do that. It was, no, 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 you cannot do that. Otherwise, the ultimate punishment from God, who they all believed in, is that I'm going to be sent to hell for the rest of eternity, burning in a fiery pit and being tortured and tormented. That stopped me from doing an awful lot of stuff, I tell you what. Right? All of these things that we looked at, don't curse, even when you're angry, don't get angry in the first place. I mean, all of these things, I mean, we'd be in a lot of trouble today if we were expected to adhere as strictly to these rules as people were in the past. See, they didn't really have the need for too many police officers back then because everybody was worried about the ultimate punishment that they believed in at the time. Or even now, I mean, people still believe in this. This is not like an antiquated thing, but in the beginnings of America, it was really just about everybody. Like 99.9% of the country was under this sort of rule in their own mind. Well, it's not actually all that different than these political things and these religious things and these spiritual things, I'll say now, because we've really evolved into not necessarily a nation based on religion, but based on people's overall beliefs, which is more of a sense of spiritualism than anything else. We say the Pledge of Allegiance every day. And again, I'm not going to rehash the exact lesson, but we broke down all those words that we say every day, and we realized that we actually promise a lot of things we didn't realize we promised, and we're under political pressure to follow through on these promises if we're going to remain citizens of the United States. And also, by the way, we talked about how politically, I mean, all of us are impacted every day just by being in a school that's funded through the government and through taxes that the citizens pay. That's another interesting point. But we took it a step farther when we broke down that pledge and we really found out what we're promising. We went back to the pressures that Tim is talking about when we did a close reading of pages 28 and 29 in the book. Now, I know you don't have them with you, but we went through a close reading activity where we talked about summarizing the different paragraphs. And I'll read you some highlights and what we summarized and the pressures that we were facing, or that Tim was facing in these situations, and see if they ring a bell as pressures that you face on a daily basis. The first paragraph we looked at started on page 27 and went to page 28, and it was really Dad saying, you never get rid of injustices by fighting. There are injustices in God's world, of course, that happens, but you don't get rid of them by fighting. So where's that pressure coming from? Because Sam has made the decision to fight. That pressure is coming from Dad directly to Tim to believe something else and to split up sort of his allegiance to the family. This second paragraph talked about how, okay, fine, at least I'm getting out of the house, I get to sit with my friends in church. The first thing his best friend asks him is, hey, we heard Sam ran away. Is that true? He's going to fight? Now he's getting some pressure and some stresses from his friends, his best friend. Sound familiar? This next paragraph talks about Mr. Beach, the minister, giving his whole sermon on how, you know what, the Bible says that we should be loyal Englishmen. The Bible says, hey, be true to God first, but render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, which means give the government that rules you its respect and its due as well, because that is the earthly domain of your rules and responsibilities. Religious and political pressure directly from Mr. Beach in that sermon, right? Sound familiar? Religious and political? We talked about the fact that this whole place is political. You act and react and say certain things and act certain ways based on what you want other people to think about you, see from you, or do for you. That's politics in a nutshell. Even though you think you're too young that politics don't apply to you, they apply. They just apply on a different level. And the last one. Tim recounts This story of this man who got drunk and rode his horse and started swearing at the pastor, and he rode his horse right at the pastor because he was mad, and in Tim's mind, God struck this man off his horse, he fell, he hit his head, and he was dead. And so Tim, upon remembering this, says, I hope that doesn't happen to Sam. I know God can strike people down. I mean, I don't think he will strike Sam down for this, but he can, and I know that he can. Pressure directly from the God he believes in, right? So think about these stresses and pressures from his family, from his best friend, from the religion and politics end, and from God himself, which is the person that he puts, or entity that he puts above everything else. That's a heck of a lot of stress that is being put on him and pressures that he's feeling from all these different aspects. Well, guys, you experience those same pressures from family, from friends, from the politics of your everyday life, and perhaps from a God that you believe in, or a higher power that you believe in, or a power that you see throughout the universe. That's what you deal with on a daily basis. So the main idea of this lesson that I was getting at today, and all of the resources, you can click on links and stuff in the bottom of this post, but the idea was we're coming at this with the understanding that these characters are not so different after all. And so when we're truly trying to understand, which is what today's lesson was all about, being able to understand the context of what these characters are experiencing, now we can go further and understand them as people and experience the revolution in a way that maybe we didn't think was possible because, oh, we're too far in the future for that to matter to us. That was the goal of today's lesson. That was my main idea. And so your afterburn that's attached to that sheet that you can download at the bottom of this post, it was all about, if you were torn between all of your knowledge and obligations like Tim and Sam, which means all of the things that you know and believe to be true, and also all the things that you feel you have to do, obligations, what path do you choose? What do you decide to do? And why do you decide to do it? This is the first step in putting ourselves in the shoes of these people and really seeing how we would grapple with all of these decisions that are being imposed on us by the pressures of a world wrapped in war around us. Great stuff, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you sleep up because your STAR test is tomorrow. It's the assessment, and I know that I don't really care that much about assessments, but it's a way for me to understand how well you're doing and how I can better help you develop. So you want to do the best you can on it so that I know how to help you throughout the rest of the year. Thanks, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.